back to SGU Uncut. I'm Leah coming back at you with week 4 of our summer series, Summer Slump. In week 1, we talked about intentionality and being intentional with our faith. In week 2, we talked about consistency, keeping consistent with our summer plans to keep God at the middle. In week 3, we talked about worshiping in the worries. Here today, I'm joined with Kelly.
Hi, Leah.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Of course. Hey, everyone.
Yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself to all of our friends on the podcast.
Yeah, so my name is Kelly, and I'm on staff here at Nativity. I direct the discipleship team, which is just our team that lays out a clear discipleship path for everybody here at Nativity.
There you go. Okay, so I have a question for
Okay.
you. I ask every person on the Summer Slump podcast,
Okay.
what is something you can share with us that you were like overly excited about this summer?
Well, my family and I are going on a cruise to Alaska this summer, and so I'm nervous because I've never done a cruise, and I don't really like boats, but I think
Okay.
a big boat is okay, right?
How long is that cruise?
The cruise is like 8 or 9 days, but we get off
Wow.
every morning and walk on glaciers and stuff. But it's the best way to see Alaska because
Right.
you get to see more of it if you take this cruise. So I'm really excited to see all the beauty of Alaska.
Wow.
on this trip.
It's like a once in a lifetime. I hear people
It
go
is,
to
yeah.
Alaska, they love it, it's beautiful.
I can't wait.
That is going to bring you so much joy, which kind of goes into what we're doing today.
Absolutely.
And I can't wait to hear more about that. But today's episode is all about joy and devoting our joys to God. Because I'll tell you, I at least struggle, a lot of the time with thanking God for the joys in my life. I'll go to him when I'm struggling. I'll be like, God, what's going on, man?
Yeah.
What's happening? But when it comes to joy, I kind of more self-indulge and think, oh, I'm so happy that I made this happen
Yeah.
for myself.
Right.
So that's what we're talking about today, and how specifically this summer, but really in the long term, we can be intentional, which goes back to week 1, but intentional about giving our joys to God and thanking him for the joys in our life. So with that, is there something that is just bringing you a lot of joy and happiness right now in your life?
Oh, yeah, lots of things. I think the weather, like the summer weather
it's been
every
so good.
year around this
Yeah.
time, like the sunshine just brings me joy. And I don't walk my dogs in the winter because it's too cold.
Oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
just getting out for a walk with my dogs at my deck on a summer morning, like just the sunshine and the weather is bringing me so much joy right now. But you're right. Who needs God when things are good, right?
Right.
I definitely have a tendency just to forget that that the sun only rises every morning because there's a God, and the temperature on the earth is perfect. The sun is the perfect distance from the earth because there's a God who made it that way. I certainly forget those things and don't always remember to thank God for those.
Right. And like in those joy, like those are joy moments too. And so all those little moments make one big thing. And if we give that joy and that thanks and that gratitude to God in all those little moments, it's like we're saying a big thank you. So like I can tell you, I struggle with that too. And so like today we're really talking about that. And there's a great Bible verse that kind of talks about joy, which goes, "This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it." And this is like one of my favorites, of course. We all know this one. And so really being intentional about thanking God and thanking him and bringing him into the day that he has made. Because
Yeah.
we're just kind of, around, but this is his day.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on this Bible verse?
Well, I love this verse for a couple reasons. Yes, joy, and we can easily celebrate joy and rejoice and be glad in a day that's good.
Right.
But I also really like this verse because every day, God made every day, and God allows, you guys already talked about worry last week, but God allows trouble and hardship and difficulty in our lives. And
Right.
that's a day to rejoice and be glad in it too, because we don't get better as human beings if we don't go through hardship, right? So there is joy in that as well. I'm sorry to tell you.
There is.
Maybe that's for another podcast, but there's joy in that as well.
Right. So like going back to like joy, do you find yourself, have you ever found yourself moving through moments of joy without like the thought of thanking God? And what was your experience with that?
Yeah, sure. I think that we all just tend towards that. I think it's just the human condition. We're selfish beings, and so we think we've created our own joy and our own happiness. But it has to be a habit where we're reminding ourselves of gratitude all the time. And
Right.
so I'd read a book years ago where the author of the book had started just a gratitude list. And it was like 1,000, the book was called 1,000 Gifts, I think. And she was just writing, just thanking God every day. It doesn't have to be long. It doesn't have to be a big journal entry, but she was just taking note of the things she was grateful for. For me, I might write the sunshine one day or the rain one day I was grateful for. And that was a habit that I got into at that time that now I remember to be grateful for things. But sometimes it's like something really amazing happens. I've been praying for something and the prayer is answered and I forget to thank God. I already forget to thank God. And I was asking for it and he delivers it and I forget. And like 2 days later, I'm like, oh, that was the answer to my prayer.
Right.
So it's just a constant practice to remember God's faithfulness.
So do you feel or see a difference when you intentionally thank God, like in your life? Like, because I want to hear your opinions on that one.
Yeah, I do. I think, again, just going back to the word joy, I think I just am a more joyful person when I'm in a season where I'm remembering to thank God, that I have a habit of gratefulness. I just went through a season for a couple of months where I would just call like the wilderness season, where I just was angry about everything. I wasn't grateful for anything. I was yelling at God all the time, which God doesn't mind. He can take it. But that was a season where I was not a joyful person. I wasn't grateful for anything. I was trying to be. I was maybe like going through the motions. But I would just encourage anybody in those seasons where you don't feel joy and you're not grateful, that you just, I would say, keep going through the motions, because you will come out of the wilderness. It's a season. And if it's not just a season, then maybe, some more help is in order for you. I've been in those seasons too, where I was actually depressed, not just in a bad season, but then I got help to get out of that season. But now I just still occasionally have a season where I'm not joyful. And so I just keep going through the motions, keep engaging with God is what I would say. And I did just try to keep engaging with God even when I was angry with him. So
it's the consistency, which is actually what we talked about in week 2. Just the little consistencies, even in the best of times, because then when those hardships come,
you're ready for them. The best of times are when you're practicing for the hard times. Yeah,
exactly. So I was thinking about this. Sometimes, at least I can accidentally use God as like a porta potty, and I'm going to explain why.
Ooh.
Because I know, right? Because it's something that's there, right? It's always good for you, but you don't always, you're like, I don't want to use that. I'll go somewhere else. Right.
There's anything else available.
Right. I'd rather walk 5 miles, right?
Yeah.
So, but sometimes, at least like in my experience, I will use God as like a
last resort,
just in case, right? When we're trying to make him that second nature for us. So have you ever experienced that, and what was the experience like for you, if you have?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of times when the problem isn't huge, it's something I feel like I can control and handle. Like if it's just like a relationship that's strained, well, I'm gonna handle that. I'm gonna talk to them. I'm gonna figure it out. Right. Or like I have 2 kids, so if it's trouble with a child, like, well, I'm the parent, so I'm just going to handle that. I'm going to control it. I'm going to figure it out. And it's not until the problem is so far gone, I've tried everything else, and I've even like maybe prayed about it a little bit, but I've also tried to control it in 1,000 different ways. It's not until like I'm just done, like, well, I don't know what else to do, I give up. That's when I turn to God.
Right.
So the experience of that is, man, I wish I had turned to God sooner, because in that moment where if you're able to just surrender to God, man, that is a freeing moment. But if I had just done it sooner, I could have saved myself a lot of trouble. And the surrender isn't something like, it doesn't just happen in that moment. You're not like, ooh, I surrender, now I'm done. Like, that's not the case. You have to surrender it maybe every minute, or maybe every hour, or maybe every morning. Surrendering a really difficult situation is something that is, again, another practice that you have to consistently do.
Right, so that in those moments you can choose that. So I know that we're getting ready to wrap up here.
Okay.
And I wanted to ask you another question. So what are ways that you have or can be worshiping God through your joys this summer? Because you had mentioned Alaska, and I can't wait to hear way
through
more
the
about
joy.
that.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things that I will do, and I'm going to challenge you guys to do it too,
Yes.
even though it could be corny, is to say it out loud. So like when we're on the beach on a vacation, we're going to be in Alaska, and I would imagine that there's so much majesty to be seen in Alaska. And we could just say, like, that's a really beautiful glacier. Look at the blue color it has. But I will often say, just to like get that in there for my kids, I will often say, like, I mean, this is God's glory on display.
Good.
And sometimes I joke around with them and be like, God's just bragging now. Look at that.
I know, right? Exactly.
And so I would just encourage you to just use God's name when you are experiencing joy this summer. Like, oh, this beautiful day, God has given it to us.
Exactly.
So that's kind of how I would try to experience God's joy and glory this summer a little more.
That is amazing. Thank you. Thank
Welcome.
you so much for coming on this podcast. We just appreciate
Thanks for having me.
all of your insight. We hope that our conversation fuels your conversations in small group, and we can't wait to see you for our next series. Have a great week, everyone.